Good morning and welcome to our Unity of Reading Sunday celebration. It's Sunday, April 5th, and it's Palm Sunday. Daily word for today is Hosanna. With joy, love, and faith, I celebrate my growing Christ awareness. Shouts of Hosanna arise as the people cover the dusty road with palm branches, greeting Jesus with great enthusiasm as he rides a donkey into Jerusalem, according to the Gospel stories. Spiritually understood, the entry of Jesus into Jerusalem symbolizes the dawning of Christ awareness in the heart of mankind. The crowd's shouts of Hosanna represent prayers that this dawning Christ awareness be protected and nurtured. I reflect on this powerful story, seeing in myself both the dawning Christ awareness and the shouting crowd of thoughts responding to the Christ light. On this Palm Sunday, my heart sings Hosanna. I celebrate the growing Christ awareness in the Jerusalem of my soul. And from Mark 11, verse 10, Blessed is the coming kingdom of our ancestor David. Hosanna in the highest heaven. So welcome everyone to this Sunday celebration. This week, most Christians would consider the beginning of Holy Week, which led up to Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, and then, of course, Easter. And of course, Unity views this story in a metaphysical way. As with all stories, we should read the story and ask ourselves, what is this story saying to me? All stories in the Bible really are about us. We are the characters, and the characters are different thought forms, beliefs, aspects of ourselves, and until we truly understand that concept of the Bible, we'll miss a lot of its meaning. So Holy Week may be thought to as beginning on Saturday with what some call Lazarus Saturday. Jesus is told of Lazarus' illness 2 days before walking to Bethany. When he arrives, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days and had been laid in the tomb. The Gospel of John related the story this way. Then Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I am glad I was not there, for your sakes, so that you may believe. When he arrives, he meets Martha. Then Martha said to Jesus, My Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, he will give you. Jesus said to her, Your brother will rise up. Martha said to him, I know he will rise up in the resurrection of the last day. Jesus told her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, even though he dies, he shall live. And whoever is alive and believes in me shall never die. Jesus then went to the tomb as he was in tears. Jesus said, Take away this stone. Do not I say that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Jesus lifted his eyes upward and said, O Father, I thank thee, for thou hast heard me. And I know that thou always hearest me. But I say these things just because of these people who stand around me, so that they may believe that thou hast sent me. He cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! Lazarus came out, still wrapped in his burial strips of linen and his face covered by a cloth. Jesus said to them, Take off the grave clothes and let him go. So what are some thoughts on what this first day of Holy Week might mean to us? No matter where we are in life, how spiritually dead we may feel at this time, it's never too late. Our old patterns of thinking, resentment, fear, anger, hatred, self-degradation leaves us in our tombs, not able to fully enjoy and live an abundant life. This is for us to look at and find out what we have buried within ourselves, which is holding us back. Bring out what is buried in our subconscious mind so that all of those things can be swept away and not keep us anymore from living our best lives. It makes me think about the movie The Sixth Sense, when the kid says, I see dead people. They're walking around and they don't even know that they're dead. Do you know of any dead people walking around? Dead to the idea that they could be more than they are now. Dead due to the resentments and fears that they hold in their minds continually. Dead with ingratitude, not able to see the blessings and the abundant life that surrounds them. Do we feel dead inside sometimes also? Perhaps this story is a call to all of us that it's time to take self-evaluation and ask ourselves, am I truly, truly living the abundant, joyful life that is promised to me? So, of course, after Saturday comes today, Palm Sunday. And I believe we all know the story of Palm Sunday. Jesus and his disciples were about to make their entrance into Jerusalem. When they were on the outskirts of Jerusalem, Jesus asked two of his disciples to go to find a colt, which is a young untamed donkey, which was tied up at the end of town. They were told that if anyone asks why they're taking it, they should say, "Your Lord has need of it." As expected, they found the young colt tied up and had to untie it to bring him to Jesus. Interestingly, this part of the story has many times been overlooked for its significance. This was a young donkey who had never been ridden before, that most likely had a bit of stubbornness and retaliation when Jesus went to sit on him. Also note that the donkey was tied up and needed to be untied by the disciples. In 5 verses in Luke 19, the word tied, or some form of it, had been mentioned. And that detail is important. This donkey was created for a purpose that was meant for Jesus. It was tied, and it needed to be untied. So why does Luke emphasize this several times, 5 times in one verse? There must be an insight here. So maybe we should ask ourselves, are we tied up or tied down? Are we tied down by so many things? Guilt, anxiety, concern. Some of us are tied down with the need to forgive that we can't bring ourselves to do. Others are tied down with obsessions or addictions. Right now, we might be tied down to our smartphones and tablets and unable to put those devices down. We might be tied up with so many tasks that we can't find the time for prayer and for meditation. We are tied up so much by our human ego concerns. We need to be free to experience God, our spiritual aspect in our lives. We are meant to experience joy of living, yet feel tied down or tied up with menial little things. Jerusalem represents our abiding consciousness in inner peace. So the story is telling us, in order to take the trip to Jerusalem and to achieve that consciousness of inner peace, we need to untie or lose our connection to the seemingly real life troubles that bind us to dysfunction and keep us chained up in fear and material things. We were created with a purpose, to express God's life and love, and we cannot fully commit to our spiritual nature when we are tied up. We must be released. We must surrender our burdens and our weights, much like the owner who surrendered his donkey to the 2 disciples, and then the donkey who surrendered his will to be ridden by Jesus. Remember, Jesus told the disciples to explain, "The Lord has need of him." To ride a donkey and to make them obedient represents control over will. We can never and would never want to abolish all our thoughts and egos, but it is a matter of allowing our Christ consciousness to rule our animal or human physical self. We are here as expressions of God. God lives and loves through us, as us. It is a matter of combining our, so to speak, our human and our spiritual natures, but allowing our spiritual nature the control. When we are untied, we can live a life of faith, free from the pressures of trying to control every aspect of our life, knowing that it is the spirit of relinquishment, the spirit of letting go, that which weighs us down so heavily, where we will find our peace and our answers. This is taking the road to Jerusalem, our overcoming everyday troubles and entering Jerusalem, a place of peace, by controlling our thoughts. Inner peace can be found only by untying ourselves from the worldly worries and relying on a higher power as the source of everything. As the story goes on, as Jesus rode into Jerusalem, the people shouted praises. They laid their cloaks on the ground and spread palm branches on Jesus' path. Laying the palms on the road signifies unlimited source of spiritual strength, receptivity, and enthusiasm. Always remember that the road is paved with strength. We can reflect on this as we make our decision to either begin or to continue on our spiritual path. At times we may come to seeming bumps on the road, things that might not appear to be working out, or sometimes we're thrown a lesson to learn. Remember that the palm branches, and know that no matter what the appearances may tell you, the road is paved with spiritual strength to endure whatever life gives you, and the enthusiasm to move forward. I love the phrase, I can do anything, anything, through my Christ nature, which gives me strength. This is where our true strength really is, the only strength that really counts for anything, our inner spiritual strength. There's another aspect of this story that is usually forgotten. If you recall, at the end of the city, Pontius Pilate was entering from the west, while Jesus entered from the east. Now Pilate had his armored troops and his fine horse. Everyone was complete with their armor and their swords, a show of force in preparation for the Passover celebration. Now this compared to Jesus' humble entry at the other end. Pilate was like a king of the material world. He showed force in place of love, wisdom, and compassion that Jesus was showing. It reminds me of the book written by Dr. David Hawkins titled Power versus Force. True power comes from within. Force is what people try to project or assert onto others. Once force encounters true power, the force crumbles. This has been demonstrated many, many times when military powers have encountered those powers of love. In Hawkins's map of consciousness, the higher consciousness of a person, the more power that person will exhibit, to the highest aspect, enlightenment, which of course Jesus possessed. The lower aspects of consciousness are related to falsehood, and the highest to truth. Force is something that you apply, but power is something that you are. Metaphysically, when Jesus acts out in his own entry to the city, it is a great spiritual power, does not need tangible physical expression. No fine horses or clothes, no strength and legions of troops. However, it is the greatest power of all and is able to crumble any force that comes against it. Like Jesus, our own spiritual power is not of this world. It lies within and expresses through us. It is a quiet grace, a loving presence. If we are truly centered in the Christ energy, the world around us will recognize its gentle power and will respond. So after Palm Sunday, tomorrow is what they consider Holy Monday. Jesus and his followers were still on the move. They arrived back in Jerusalem again. And after Jesus rode into Jerusalem, he entered the temple and drove out all those who were selling and buying there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of all those who sold doves. He said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you are making it into a den of thieves." Once the temple was cleared, the blind and the lame came to Jesus, and he cured them. The cleansing of the temple represents Jesus cleaning the temple of his own consciousness, and only once he freed the consciousness of his own consciousness was he able to heal. He was to express the power of the divine within. Just as we consider those things keeping us in the tomb of failure, unhappiness, and lack, so are those thoughts creating a den of thieves, stealing away our happiness and our power. Of course, the money changers represent those thoughts and material aspects we place higher than our relationship with our source. These thoughts of material things, along with self-doubt, fear, steal our ability to connect with our higher power. Jesus is explaining that we must clear our minds of outward worries, fears, and material thoughts to achieve that level of higher consciousness which we all so desire. It is only in that higher consciousness, our Christ consciousness, that our power resides. I read an interesting quote from the book called Ask Yourself This, and the question is, how safe is it for someone to walk through your mind? Maybe that's a good question to ask yourself. Rumi once said, God is saying to us, be careful, my servants, and purify, attune, and expand your thoughts about me, for they are my house. This week's events can be viewed as preparation for expressing our divine nature and really feel and express the resurrection of Easter within ourselves. So this week, I encourage you to contemplate and to work on these things. Ask yourself, What is it that what is it that needs to be untied in my life so that I can allow myself to be guided and to be used by a higher power? As we work on the realization that when it is untied and let go, nothing can stop the work of God and the power of God within us. It is our true nature to be happy, loving, joyful, and we can only express this when we let go of outside concerns. Ask yourself also, how might I be cheating and shortchanging myself? We need to be authentic with ourselves and our core values. Truly knowing who we are heirs to the kingdom, is the most powerful realization that we can ever have. Remember, you are one with God. You are God's children of the Most High, and the story of Jesus is your story, your awakening. As you grow in your understanding of the way of God, you become ready to show the full depth of your true power. You become ready to give life to who you really are. Make a commitment this week to roll away the stone of your tomb. Remove any blocks that are keeping us from our divine nature. I invite you to clean the temple of your mind. Deny the erroneous thinking and replace it with the truth. Again, as we let go, we can let God be God in us. As Jesus' prayer to Lazarus was, "Arise, come out." Ask yourself, what greatness is asleep within me? What attributes and talents may I have let go to sleep or even die within the tomb of my worldly thoughts and worries? What quality, desire, or activity are we not allowing to be manifest in our material world as an expression of God? It is time to wake up who we are, time to claim our inheritance, our God-given power. In questioning Jesus' authority, in Matthew 21, when Jesus came to the temple, the high priest and the elders came up to him while he was teaching and said, "By what authority do you do these things? And who gave you this authority?" Inner authority is not accountable to anything or anyone outside of you. Know deep inside that you have been given the authority to do all the things that Jesus did, and even greater things. Know who you are and love yourself, and so it is. Let us all be untied as we share in this Palm Sunday message so that we can unite with the one and the only power in our lives and express our greatness. And so it is. I thank you for joining us today for this Sunday celebration. Even though we don't have physical services, we still do have bills to pay. So I invite you, if you feel moved by one of our messages or by the Unity teachings in general, to send a check to Unity of Reading, 4443 10th Avenue in Temple, PA. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next Sunday.